Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Barbara Mojica. She is an author, an educator, and parent, and she provides tools to inspire us, entertain, and educate youth. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Kate, and I'm really happy to be able to share with your listeners today. Looking forward to it.
You are welcome to the show, Barbara. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure a lot of people, not just in India, but across the globe, will benefit from what we are discussing about. We'll be talking about the history, importance of history in our present. So, my first question to you, Barbara, is that you have been a historian, a retired educator. You have served more than 40 years as a teacher, special educator, principal, and school district administrator. And you still continue to talk about education. You continue to talk about the importance of history. Why do you lay so much of importance on history, especially in today's time?
It has never been more important. We can't possibly understand how we got to where we are today or create any kind of plan for a better future if we don't understand our history. We can't erase the past. We can't change the past, but we can learn from the past. And I feel that today, in our very, very divided society, we are not paying attention to the basics. Children are being taught what to think, they are not being taught how to think. And history is very, very important in developing critical thinking skills because children must take their information, learn about a topic. You must study the topic and you must then apply the facts to that topic. You discover the facts and then you reason what is true and what is not true. In our world today, we live in the world of instant communication, of social media that largely feeds us information based on what we like or what our friends like. The algorithm keeps reinforcing that. And children are no longer able to reason and think for themselves. They're being fed very biased streams of information. And I believe that our education system is trying to force a one size fits all approach to learning. And I learned during my long education career that does not work at all. Children learn in many different ways. Uh, some children are hands-on learners. Some children are auditory learners. They learn by listening. Some children are visual learners. Some children are very tactile and they have to build with their hands. We can't impose one type of education on all children. So I spent many years working with children in that general population with a system that was trying to do just that. And I became aware that so many children were falling through the cracks. So then I went back to school and I studied special education and I went all the way to the other extreme. I worked with children that had such severe needs, children that were autistic, children that had Down syndrome, children that had physical disabilities. And all of these children had to learn in many different ways. And it took a very multidisciplinary approach in order to be successful with those children. So now what I do in addition to writing a series of books emphasizing the importance of history, understanding history, being able to think and reason critically. I also provide tools and strategies for parents and teachers to help implement those critical thinking skills. And I do that in many ways through a YouTube teaching channel, by providing informational videos for children and teachers. And I also have a very extensive blog where I provide resources. And I even do book reviews and suggest materials that parents and teachers might want to use with their children.
Right, Barbara. Right. Well put. Now, let's look at the present situation. How do you think people will learn history? And should children learn more history? Or should our politicians learn more history? Should the general population learn more history? Because it seems to be, that people are more interested in WhatsApp history, social media history, and rather than the real history. And at the same time, a lot of times, people say, forget about the past, past is past. And almost they think that, talking about history could be eating up their disk storage or whatever. And that is where, people want to move from the past. And what they sometimes forget is that that move from the past does not mean moving from the history. How do you instill the sense of history then in in so many narratives? People are using it at the same time, and in this backdrop, if you see, we are forgetting about history, but ChatGPT is storing history as knowledge and putting it in front of us, and then we are happy to take it, many without knowing many a times whether it is fact or false. I want to understand then, how do you bring the correction in the understanding, in the perception of history itself? What is the way? Not only you need hundreds of people like you.
Well, I think the best way is to first approach it from the family. Children, when they're very young, what are the first things they wonder about? They wonder, well, who am I? Where did I come from? How do I fit in with my family? So, parents, of course, are our first teachers. And long before a child enters a classroom, their brains have been formed to a large extent. So parents have to be the first teachers. So what can parents do? Parents can open their children's minds to these kinds of ways of how to think. So tell a child, we can go out into the community, take a child on the walk and just ask the child, you know, two words. I wonder. Look at an old house. I wonder where that old house came from. I wonder who lived in that house. I wonder if they ate the same kind of food I ate. I wonder if they wore the same kind of clothing. I wonder if they had the same kind of friends I have. So just taking children and exposing them to curiosity. Open a child's mind to be curious. Never accept a yes and no answer. Always ask the child, why? What do you think? Could it be different? Uh, and always let them give you an opinion. Teach children empathy for people who do things in different ways from us. So we show children our family customs and culture. And grandparents are great for doing that. Children sometimes relate a lot better to their grandparents than they do to their parents because they see the grandparents as a bridge. They see the grandparents as a repository of information, of living a long life and understanding life skills. That they can go to their grandparents who have this big, long lifetime of knowledge and ask them, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Why? What was it like when you were little? What was school like then? And how is it different from today? How can you help me understand why you have the customs you do? Why do you go to the kind of events that you want to go to? Help me understand. And I think grandparents can do a lot in that respect. Parents also have to teach children to be fair and to always consider the viewpoints and wishes of others. That doesn't mean that we're not entitled to having viewpoints of our own. But again, they have to be based on facts. And we have to teach children to slow down. Because today, in our world of instant communication, how do we get our information? We go to the internet, we type in a question, and then the children look on the internet, they see the first thing that comes up. Oh, this must be the answer. Well, that's only one possibility. Do you look down on the page to see the other possibilities to consider? Long ago, when we went to school, we had to take the books out of the library, get the information, read the information, sort through the information, decide what was true and what was not true, put it all together, and then come to a conclusion. Well, that process has been speeded up exponentially today. And we have so much information overload. We don't know how to filter the information. So again, that's what I'm talking about. We have to learn how to think, well, what's just a fact? What's just an opinion? What's a real historical source? What's a real citation that we can prove to be true? We have to take the time to do that. And if we do, we will learn to understand much better what's going on today, because we will learn to filter out some of the noise that we're getting, and to, you know, get down to basics and understand, well, these are the facts. Let's stop and consider them. Let's have a discussion about it. You give me your opinion, I'll give you my opinion, but are they just opinions, or are they based on real factual knowledge? Historians talk about the seas of history. They talk about the content, the topic. They talk about the citations, the real first-hand historical sources, what we can prove to be true. Then they talk about the context. What else is going on in the world to influence that? That can have a big effect on information. Something that's going on somewhere else may be affecting the way we're getting that message. How's it being communicated to us? Is it being communicated to us by a real credible source, or are we just hearing it through some talking head who is giving a one-sided opinion of that issue? So we have to stop. We have to slow down in order to understand the reality of what is going on.
Absolutely. So I want to understand from you what history should be, taught, understood, or popularized today. Should it be the good history or the not so good history? Because a lot of times people want to use only selective information so that they can only help, propagate the ideas that they have. And obviously a lot of leadership has to take that into accountability on this, because uh, this they use history many a times so that it serves their purpose. So I want to understand, in these delicate times when people have so much of means of distorting the medium of communication itself, how, what sort of history should be taught in a neutral manner, good history, bad history, so that children can make the right assessment in an objective manner.
It has to be all of history. It has to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have to take everything that happened, and we have to look at it, but again, through an objective lens. What is has been proven to be true and actual fact. Now, some of it might have been very negative at one point in history, and it might not be viewed as negatively today, or it might be viewed even more negatively. But the fact that some people, due to their own current opinions, want to erase parts of history or want to ignore parts of history that don't support their political point of view or their opinion, that certainly is not the right way to present history. So you can't say, well, the Civil War was evil, slavery was evil, so we should erase anyone who has ever owned a slave. Because there were former slave owners in history, former slaves in history rather, who actually, when they were freed, became slave owners themselves. So how do you justify that? How do you justify a former slave later owning slaves? Or how do you justify the Ku Klux Klan? Uh, the Ku Klux Klan was part of the Democratic Party during the Civil War. And now many members of the Democratic Party want to erase that part of history without admitting that they themselves were a part of that movement.
Right, right. That's the tricky issue. Even in, say, a lot of countries have a colonial past.
Hmm.
And if they talk about that, a lot of young, impressionable minds who look at world in a very global manner today will get a different sense of their own country's history or of their own past. A lot of countries nowadays, you see, are asking for reparations because of the crimes committed in the past. And a lot many times, people do not want to accept that because it is politically inconvenient for them, or maybe it does not suit their purpose. And that is leading to a lot of a debate and discussion on that. How do you think uh, the young minds will be able to know enough history as they learn, as well as reconcile to the facts of life from their own history, as well as the changing dynamics of the present world, and look at it in the way they want to look at it going forward? Help us understand so that parents are able to instill those facts in the right manner possible, and they are also not just uh, putting on the same narrative into their children's head that is being pushed by whatever people or vested interest in the society.
Well, I think that narrative has been pushed for a long time, and many parents were not aware of it at all. And the one of the few good things that came out of the COVID epidemic was the fact that children were locked out of schools in many cases for so long that they were at home learning. And for the first time, parents were actually seeing the kind of things that their children were being taught. And they woke up and they realized this is not the way I want to raise my child. So they began to think about alternatives. They began to think about other types of schooling for their child. Should they homeschool? Should they join with other parents and form mini school cooperatives? If they had the resources, should they put their children in a private school? Though in some cases, the private schools could be just as subjective and negative. This has been going on for a long time. It's a combination of a certain elite class in the universities and certain political interests. And it's very insidious. It, it's probably been going on since at least the late 80s or early 90s. And as I said, I began to kind of see this in the schools as I was working. And but it was very, very insidious, and most parents weren't aware of. For most parents, the public education system is the route they go because they pay their taxes that support public education. A huge amount of money is put into public education. And in most cases, parents felt that they didn't really have much choice. They're busy with their own lives, trying to balance work and everything else. And then they realized this is really going to damage my child. So I've got to do something about this. So my personal philosophy is that the money should follow the child, and that the parent should have the final choice in the type of education, whether that be a charter school, whether they take the money and put it toward a private school, whether they decide to go into homeschooling or forming co-ops with friends, however they wanted to do it. Some parents decide to do a combination, put the child in a school setting for part of the time and homeschool for part of the time. There are many, many options that are available to parents, but they have to step up and they have to just assume that responsibility and say, I am going to be the one who chooses what is best for my child, and no one is going to dictate it to me.
Right, right, Barbara. And one option that you chose was your book series through the whimsical Little Miss history character to narrate, her book series. So your book series. So tell us a bit about your book series so that people are able to, get more sense of the history of whatever you are trying to communicate in the best way and use it for themselves.
Well, in my book series, I use an interactive cartoon-like character, Little Miss History, who's based on a younger version of me. She's an explorer. She's out to learn about the world. She wants to understand different people and the way they live and why they did the things they did. So she's a funny character, but I hope that my readers, children, and sometimes the parents and grandparents enjoy her immensely as well. They they see through her a bit of themselves taking part in these historical adventures. And the books explore many different types of things. I ask children questions throughout all the books. I want them to do that critical thinking. I give them problems to tackle. So some of my books have kind of an iconic historical monument focus, like the Statue of Liberty or Mount Rushmore or Ellis Island, where the immigrants of the 1900s came through when they first came to America. I have books on that explore nature and historical issues like Sequoia National Park. We talk about the redwood trees. We talk about the science. We talk about how they grow. We talk about how the land was once owned by Native Americans, the history of who lived there, the animals and the nature, the geology that's involved in the parks. And then I asked them how this links up to today. So today we have this monument on Mount Rushmore, for instance. So we have a
Right.
monument to four presidents on Mount Rushmore. We have a secret hall that's hidden behind the walls of Mount Rushmore, and we talk about that. But then I asked them, well, now the Native Americans who we took this land from are building their own monument to Crazy Horse, their leader, nearby. And what do the children think about that? Should we have one monument to the presidents, or should we have two monuments? Do we need to talk about Native American rights? And 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 how can we explore the issues of Native American rights in the UN and in our society today? So all of the books are like that. I give children nuggets of people who might have been forgotten in history, who we may not have known about. I ask them to think about those people, to explore those feelings and to apply them to how we are learning history today and how it can be beneficial to creating a better plan for our future and the future of our own children and grandchildren.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for them to understand it better, you talk about, that history is the key to solving today's problems. How can they look at history from this angle?
Well, we can do that in a couple of different ways. First of all, we could see what we did wrong in the past, what didn't work. We can take that and we can look at what's happening today and we could say, well, if that situation were happening today, how would we address it? How would it have changed? How would what's happening in the world around us today, because today of course we are much more global. When we talk about the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln, we're talking about a world in which the telegraph was the most modern invention. How it took days to get a letter from one place to another. Well, that's certainly not the case today. History certainly would not have occurred like that today, where we have instant communication, where we can wipe out civilization with the touch of a button. So our world has just changed. We have to put everything in perspective. We have to understand that people thought differently in a different time. They communicated differently. They they had different tools and different resources than we have today. So we have to learn to readjust our thinking, to take the good, to take the bad, to take the ugly, and to try to create for ourselves a better legacy, a better, a newer, uh, a more improved way of doing things. That's not to say that we won't make mistakes, because we will always make mistakes, but we can do the best we possibly can by learning and reasoning and thinking through the issues, how we can do it better in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is so much to learn about our present. There is so much to learn from the past, and that will help us make our present better. So, how can people learn more about all these things from you? What is the best way for them to connect with you?
Best way for them to connect with me is to go to my website, which is just www.littlemisshistory.com. From there, they can get any of my resources. They can read about all the books. They can get the links to the books, which are available worldwide. They can go to my blog. They can find the articles and tips that I have and the book reviews. They can go to click on the YouTube channel and they'll be taken to the YouTube channel. I have my teaching videos. I have information videos. I have history for kids by kids, which is very good. Kids love learning history from other kids. They can go there and they can go to all of my social media channels. So it's just pretty much one click on any of the buttons so they can get to me. And I also have an instant chat there. So if they click on that, I would be glad to chat with them and help in any way I can.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation.